Hey everybody, I wanted to make a special video because today happens to be Harry Nilsson's birthday. Harry Nilsson is just one of the greatest singers of all time. He also happens to be one of my favorite songwriters of all time. He recorded a whole bunch of just fantastic music over his career, and he's just a really fascinating person as well. Just his connection with the Beatles, with the Monkees, with tons of other artists. Just a really, really fascinating guy. And I highly recommend watching a documentary, which I don't know if it's on Netflix anymore, but I think it still might be. It's called Who is Harry Nilsson and Why is Everybody Talking About Him? And it's a great, great documentary. Anyway, because it's his birthday, I wanted to show you my Harry Nilsson record collection. I was actually, someone on my Instagram account suggested that I make a video of all of my Harry Nilsson collection. So I have to give credit to them, so I thank you very much for the idea. And here we go. Actually, I need to flip these over if I'm going to go in the correct order. So the first Nilsson record that I have, this is called Nilsson Early Times. Now these are a bunch of demos that Harry made before he got signed to RCA. So and they were all written by this other person. I guess this guy named Scott Turner. So this guy Scott Turner wrote a bunch of songs that he was trying to pitch to producers and bands or whatever. And he needed someone to sing them, so he paid Harry Nilsson $5 per song to sing these tunes. Well, flash forward to, I guess maybe about 5 or 6 years later, when Harry Nilsson was just riding really high with the song Without You and the album Nilsson Schmilsson. This guy, Scott Turner, asked Nilsson if it would be okay if he released these songs, and Harry Nilsson said, absolutely, go ahead, you already paid me for the session, so release it. So that just kind of tells you the kind of guy Harry Nilsson was. He didn't try to get any more money off of these recordings. He could have said, like, no, I don't want you to release those because, I'm a different artist now or whatever. He said, yeah, go ahead. And he gave his blessing. All that information is on the back of this, actually, which is really cool. The songs aren't amazing, but there's some kind of cool ones on here. My favorite song is this one song called It Just Ain't Right. And this other song on here from these sessions, but not on this record, but from the same sessions, is called Thank Heaven for Kathy, which I really like a lot. But anyway, yeah, Harry Nilsson, Early Times. Okay, then I have 2 copies of this record. They're both stereo. This is one of my favorite Harry Nilsson records. This is Aerial Ballet. And it is just a fantastic record. This is Nilsson's, this is the second record he made. I don't have the first one on vinyl, which is Pandemonium Shadow Show. Don't have that one. That one's really hard to find, and I've definitely looked. And actually, they go for just ridiculous amounts of money online. There is a reissue that just came out a couple years ago. I think of the mono version of that, and I'll probably pick that up eventually. But anyway, for now, I have Aerial Ballet, which is just great. I have 2 copies of it. I'm not sure why I have 2. I think I found one of these, this one, which is not in the best shape. I think I found this one for like 99 cents somewhere, and this one's in really good shape. But this is just a fantastic record. It's got Good Old Desk. Don't Leave Me is probably one of my favorite Nilsson songs. It's got Everybody's Talking, which is fantastic. Anyway, great record. By the way, produced by Rick Gerard, who Nilsson worked with early on in his career for the first 3 records, and I really love those first 3 records. To me, are my favorite Nilsson collection of songs. But I like his whole career, as I'm sure as we go along here I'll explain how I like different parts of his career. This is an interesting record. This is a combination of the first 2 records. This is called Aerial Pandemonium Ballet. So Nilsson, he's known as this like eccentric artist, but he broke a lot of ground. So he's the very first artist to ever remix some of his albums and just re-release them. So he took songs from his first album, Pandemonium Shadow Show, and his second album, Aerial Ballet, and he re-recorded vocals on some stuff. He took away vocals. He sped some songs up, slowed them down. Anyway, he put all his favorite songs and made one really great album. And this album I love. This is probably my favorite Harry Nilsson record. This one right here. It's so perfect. I can't describe to you how perfect this record is. It's just full of just everything that I love about Nilsson. Double track vocals, his high falsetto vocals, amazing songwriting. It's just great. So I recommend this album highly. Aerial Pandemonium Ballet. Check it out. Very cool stuff. Now, next, this is the third in his. This is his third record and the first two records he made. Also, just an absolute classic record, one of my all-time favorites. This is called Harry, and this actual record jacket's not in the best condition, but the record's actually pretty great. It's got tons of great songs. The big song from here was "I Guess the Lord Must Be in New York City." It has a song called "The Puppy Song." It's got a cover of the Beatles' Mother Nature's Son, which is great. It's got one of my all-time favorite Nilsson songs called "Open Your Window." It's just excellent, an excellent album. I can't praise it enough. So this is Harry. Moving on, Nilsson, again, he was breaking a lot of ground. He came up with this idea for a children's cartoon, a television show called The Point, and he came up with the whole concept, the whole story. He wrote the soundtrack, and this happens to be that very soundtrack. This is Nilsson, The Point, which is another great album. It's the big song from here is Me and My Arrow, which is just, I love it so much. I actually have that song in my jukebox because it's just one of my all-time favorites. It's got other great songs like Think About Your Troubles. Are You Sleeping is just brilliant. Anyway, I love this record, like I love all of Nilsson's records. I'm probably going to be saying that a whole lot just because I can't describe to you how much I love Nilsson. He's just amazing. Anyway, this is The Point by Harry Nilsson. If you haven't seen the cartoon, check it out. It's on YouTube. It's got Ringo as the narrator, so you can't go wrong with that. Well, another version is Dustin Hoffman as the narrator, but I think the famous one is Ringo. So, then Nilsson won a Grammy for singing the song "Everybody's Talking," which was not written by Nilsson, but written by Fred Neil. But Nilsson's version is the famous one, and it was in the Midnight Cowboy soundtrack, which is right here. Speaking of Dustin Hoffman, there he is. So he was asked to, actually, the story about this is kind of interesting, and they talk about it in the documentary about Nilsson, but I'll tell you the short story here. The movie Midnight Cowboy, they wanted to have a song written by either Nilsson, Bob Dylan, or Joni Mitchell, so they asked all three of them to write a song for this movie Midnight Cowboy. And while they were working on the movie, they just put the song "Everybody's Talking" by Nilsson in there just so they could have something in there while they were like working on the movie, to have something to set the mood, you know? So Nilsson went away and wrote the song "I Guess the Lord Must Be in New York City." Joni Mitchell wrote, I forget what song she wrote, and then Bob Dylan wrote "Lay Lady Lay." Well, whoever the producers were didn't like any of those songs and just decided to just stick with "Everybody's Talking," which then went on to win the Grammy for best song of the year or best male vocal of the year, or something like that. Anyway, that's the story behind Midnight Cowboy. That's actually the first way a lot of people really became aware of Nilsson. He just became this like huge overnight success. But actually, the other way that people became aware of Nilsson was that when John and Paul came out to America in 1968 to announce the formation of Apple Records, they were asked during the press conference that someone asked John, "Who's your favorite group?" And John said Nilsson. They asked Paul, "Who's your favorite artist?" And he said Nilsson. So all of a sudden, like, the Beatles were saying that they love Nilsson. So overnight, he became this like household name. And then the Midnight Cowboy soundtrack happened, and that just blew his career up in a great way. Then, after The Point, Nilsson took a major left turn, which he did a lot in his career. He decided to release an album of all songs written by that at this time an unknown songwriter who happens to be named Randy Newman. So this record is called Nilsson Sings Newman, and this is an absolute masterpiece. It was recorded beautifully. It's just got a piano, Randy Newman playing piano, and then the rest is just Nilsson on vocals. But like layered vocals, tons of harmonies. The songs are fantastic. Nilsson, in my opinion, has never sounded better vocally than on this record. It's just an absolute masterpiece. And even if you don't like Randy Newman, this is a fantastic record. So check it out. Nilsson Sings Newman. Moving on. This is when Harry Nilsson absolutely exploded and was just the hottest thing in music for probably about a year. This album, Nilsson Schmielsen, produced by Richard Perry, had the massive hit song Without You, which was written by Badfinger. It's also got the song Coconut, which became huge. It's got the song Gotta Get Up, Driving Along, Early in the Morning, Jump into the Fire, The Good Times Roll, I'll Never Leave You. The whole album is just an absolute classic record. And if you haven't heard it, it's just great. You got to check it out. So that's Nilsson Schmielsen. And the follow-up to Nilsson Schmielsen is again produced by Richard Perry. This is called Son of Schmielsen. Another really great record. This is when Nilsson's music, though, decided to take a little bit of a turn. He started writing a lot more darker tunes. A little bit more, not a little bit more, but a lot more like kind of jokey kind of stuff, almost kind of grotesque. This one has the famous song on here, You're Breaking My Heart. So it's You're Breaking My Heart, You're Tearing It Apart, so fuck you. Which of course is pretty outrageous to say in a pop rock song, especially in 72. Sorry, my computer fell asleep, so I'm sleeping it. Anyway, this record though, besides all the hype or whatever, it is a great record. It's got one of my favorite Nilsson songs called Turn On Your Radio. It also has a song called The Lottery Song, which is excellent. It features guitar work by George Harrison. It's got drums by Ringo, who's listed here as Richie Snare. It's got Klaus Bormann on bass. It's just full of just amazing musicians, and I love it. It's a great record. Son of Schmielsen. Next up, again, here he decided to take a major left turn, and I actually have 3 copies of this. He decided to record an album of all standards. This is before everyone else was doing this. Of course, now it's like all the aging rock stars decided to record standards, but Nilsson did it first, in the sense of being a rock singer and then deciding to sing standards. This album is called A Little Touch of Schmielsen in the Night, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful record. This happens to be a German pressing. And then I have an original US pressing. Then I have another US pressing on the Best Buy series. So I have 3 versions of this. I don't know why I need 3, but hey, why not? Great record. Okay, then maybe one of Nilsson's most notorious time periods. This album is called Pussycats. This is produced by John Lennon, and this is during John Lennon's Lost Weekend, and this is at around the time when John and Harry Nilsson were in Los Angeles, getting drunk, being crazy. I'm sure you've read all about it. If you haven't, look up The Lost Weekend. There's some insane stuff that went down. But during this album, well, first let me back up a little bit. The songs on here, there's some great songs. There's also some kind of just throwaway tunes, in my opinion. Like there's covers of, there's a cover of the Bob Dylan song Subterranean Homesick Blues, which to me is just kind of a throwaway the way they do it. They do, I think they do Rock Around the Clock. Yeah, they do, which is also kind of throwaway. But there's some great songs. There's a song on here called Many Rivers to Cross, which Nilsson just, his vocal is just shredding to pieces, but it sounds amazing. Sadly, during the making of this album, Harry Nilsson lost his voice. He actually ruptured a vocal cord. But he didn't want to tell John about that because he was afraid the sessions would stop and the project wouldn't get finished. So he just barreled on through. So some of the songs on here, his voice sounds really, really hoarse and just painful. especially the song called Old Forgotten Soldier, which is a really great song. And actually, his voice being all screwed up kind of works on that song, but it is kind of just, it's a little bit heartbreaking to hear his voice literally just disintegrating right in front of you. But that being said, this album is a really good record, and it's interesting because it's the only record John Lennon produced. Actually, let me take that back. That's not true. One of the only records John Lennon produced during his solo time after the Beatles. So, Pussycats by Harry Nilsson. Okay, carrying on now. This album is called Do It on Monday. This is, again, Nilsson just kind of doing whatever the heck he wanted to do. He wanted to originally call this album God's Greatest Hits, but they wouldn't let him do it. So he called it Do It on Monday, but to get away with getting it, or rather to get his way, he made it a double album cover. So it says Do It on Monday on the front, but if you open it up, he got his way and he had God's Greatest Hits. So that's very Nilsson of him to do that. This isn't one of my favorite Nilsson records, but it's definitely got some great stuff. I love the song Down by the Sea. Kojak Colombo is cool. It's a very interesting album. A lot of steel drums on here. A huge band playing on here. We got Van Dyke Parks, Jim Keltner, Ringo's on here again. Definitely an interesting record, but this is Do It on Monday by Harry Nilsson. Next up, one of my favorite, probably actually my favorite later period Harry Nilsson album. This album is called Nilsson Sandman. And it has just one of my all-time favorite songs by anybody called Pretty Soon There'll Be Nothing Left for Everybody. Look up that song right now. It's so great. I cannot describe you how absolutely fantastic it is. It's definitely the best song on this record. But this record has a bunch of other good songs too. I'll Take a Tango is cool. Something True is nice. Kind of a jokey, funny a cappella song called The Ivy Covered Walls. There's a really drunky song called Here's Why I Did Not Go to Work Today, which is pretty good, pretty funny. There's a big throwaway song on here, in my opinion, called The Flying Saucer Song, which goes too long. There's a song on here called Jesus Christ, You're Tall, which is kind of funny. Anyway, you just got to hear it. Nilsson Sandman is great, so check this one out. Then, a little bit of a dip in Nilsson's career, I will say. This is called That's the Way It Is. So, after Nilsson recorded Do It on Monday and Sandman, and they were both they cost a lot of money for the label, and they didn't have any hits, the label kind of cracked the whip on Nilsson and made him, they took over more of what he was doing. So they made him do a duet with a lady on here called Just One Look, Baby, I'm Yours, which is okay. They also made him they were trying to make him write a hit, basically, or have another hit. So we did the America song, I Need You, which actually sounds great. He recorded a George Harrison song called That Is All. Recorded the Randy Newman song, Sail Away. But this album really doesn't do it for me. There's a couple songs in here that I like the ones I mentioned. But really, it's kind of a weird one. It kind of sounds like Nilsson's guest starring on someone else's record. But anyway, this is Nilsson. That's the way it is. And I'm missing one Nilsson record that would come next. It's called Nilsson. I don't have that one, but I do like a lot of the songs on there. It has a song called Mucho Mungo, which was a song he co-wrote with John Lennon. There's a song called Blanket for a Sail, I believe, that's on there. A very good record, but I don't have it, but I will have it someday. Next up, this is the last record Harry released in his lifetime. This is called Flash Harry, and I think it was only released in Japan for a while. This is a reissue, but it's a really, really good album. It's got a song called Cheek to Cheek, written by Lowell George and Van Dyke Parks, which is great. It has a song called Best Move, which I really like a lot. He does the song Old Dirt Road, which he co-wrote with John Lennon, which is on John Lennon's Walls and Bridges album, but on here it's Harry's version. Just a really solid record, and it was produced by Steve Cropper from Booker T and the MGs. Also, he played with Otis Redding, so just an amazing guitar player. Anyway, Flash Harry is definitely worth checking out. Okay, now we got a couple of slight oddities, I guess. After Nilsson decided to stop making proper records, he got into soundtrack work, and probably his most famous soundtrack work, he wrote the music for the Popeye movie with Robin Williams and Shelley Duvall. And this is a Robert Altman film. And Nilsson wrote the whole soundtrack, and it's really, really good. If you haven't seen this movie, I really recommend it. It's like a dark version of Popeye, but it's got great, great songs. So this is the Popeye soundtrack, which is very cool. Then this is a Nilsson Greatest Hits album. The story behind this, which is kind of weird, is that the guy on the cover is not Harry Nilsson. This is an actor dressed up like Nilsson. That is Nilsson in the mirror. But this was put together by the label without Nilsson's consent. So it's kind of a weird collection. And on the back here, that's not even Harry Nilsson. That's just some other dude that dressed up like Harry, which is kind of weird. But obviously, it's a great compilation. And it has a song on here called Daybreak, which I think is from... I could be wrong about this, but I think that's from an album which I don't have, called Son of Dracula, which was a weird movie he made with Ringo. Anyway, so this is a greatest hits compilation, which if you're just trying to discover Nilsson, this is the way to go. And last but not least, I said last but not least for some reason. Last but not least, this is a Nilsson record that came out on Record Store Day a couple of years ago. This is called Nilsson Sessions 1967 to 1975, Rarities from the RCA Albums Collection. And this is really, really a great, great rarities record. It's got a song on here called Postcard, which is excellent. It's got another song on here called Marry Me a Little, which I really, really like a whole lot. It's a cover of a Stephen Sondheim song. But this is just an excellent, excellent compilation of his rarities, so worth owning for sure. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. That's my Nilsson collection. And hey, happy birthday, Harry Nilsson, one of my favorite artists of all time. And like I said, if you don't know about Nilsson, check him out, because you will like him a whole lot. So, happy birthday, Harry. And hey, put lime in the coconut. Or something like that, right? All right.